It's been years, but some days, it feels like yesterday. The air still smells different, heavier, here in Miami, a constant reminder of everything that happened. I'm Kyle. Or at least, I used to know who Kyle was. Now, I'm just the guy with the shadow, the one people whisper about, the mechanic who lost it all. Most days, I still catch myself flinching when a police siren wails in the distance, a cold dread seizing my gut. Public suspicion is a crushing weight. It's not just the shame, it's the way it rewrote my memories, made me question my own sanity for so long. Every morning I'd wake up, a dull ache behind my eyes, and for a split second, before the reality crashed down, I'd hope it had all been a nightmare. But then the heavy silence of my empty apartment, the stack of unpaid bills, the ghost of my old garage, they'd all scream the truth. I was isolated, branded, a pariah in my own life, carrying emotional scars deeper than any wrench mark. I met Jessica 5 years before the world ended. It was at a local bar, somewhere off Calle Ocho. She was laughing, head thrown back, a mass of dark, curly hair framing a smile that could stop traffic. She had this way of looking at you, like you were the only person in the room, her eyes sparkling with an intense, almost frantic energy. I was a simple guy back then, 30, running my own mechanic shop, proud of the grease under my nails and the honest work I did. My friend said I was too trusting, a bit of a softy, always seeing the best in people. And when Jessica fixed those dazzling eyes on me, I didn't just see the best in her, I saw everything I'd ever wanted. The beginning was a whirlwind, a dizzying rush. We'd spend hours talking, her stories vibrant and compelling, full of drama and passion. She'd describe past injustices, how people had wronged her, always with a tremor in her voice that made you want to wrap her in cotton wool. I felt protective, like I'd found this fragile, brilliant creature who needed my steady presence. She'd say things like, "You're the only one who truly understands me, Kyle," and my chest would swell. I was smitten, completely, utterly gone. She moved into my place within a few months, bringing with her a chaotic energy that I initially found endearing. My small, tidy world became a vibrant mess of her clothes, her art supplies, her constant stream of friends and acquaintances. Looking back, the red flags were there, fluttering faintly, like distant storm warnings I was too infatuated to notice. Little things, really. She'd always be the victim in her stories, no matter the situation. A friend didn't call her back. They were clearly trying to hurt her. A boss gave her constructive criticism. He was obviously sexist. I tried to offer a different perspective. Maybe it wasn't intentional, but she'd shut me down with a wounded look and a quiet, "You just don't get it, Kyle." And I'd immediately apologize, feeling like I'd failed her. Her possessiveness, too, started subtly. "Why were you talking to that waitress so long? Did you really need to spend so much time with your friend Mark?" It felt like love at first, an intense devotion, but it slowly started to feel like an invisible tether. My friends, the ones who had been my anchor for years, started to voice concerns. My best friend, Mike, once pulled me aside, looking worried. "Man, she's intense. Are you okay?" I just brushed him off, a defensive heat rising in my face. "You don't know her like I do, Mike. You don't understand her sensitivity." I was so convinced I was the only one who truly saw her. The first real cracks started to show about a year in. Her moods became more volatile, swinging wildly from effusive adoration to cold, cutting silence. I felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells, trying to anticipate her needs, her feelings, to keep the peace. Any disagreement, no matter how small, would escalate into a dramatic scene where she was deeply wounded, and I was, inevitably, the villain. I remember one evening, I accidentally left a greasy rag on the kitchen counter. She found it, crumpled on the floor, weeping. "You don't respect me, Kyle. You don't care about our home." My home, she called it, as if it wasn't the place I'd poured my sweat and savings into. My stomach would tighten, a familiar knot forming, and I'd fall into the ritual of apology and reassurance, promising to be better, to do better. My business, my passion, began to suffer. I'd be late to open, or leave early because she needed me, or because I was too mentally drained to focus on rebuilding an engine. My friends drifted further away, tired of my excuses, or perhaps, more accurately, tired of Jessica's increasingly unpredictable behavior. She'd often make a scene when we were out, usually playing the damsel in distress, subtly implying that I was neglecting her or being insensitive. I defended her, always. You guys just don't understand how delicate she is, I'd say, my voice strained. But deep down, a seed of unease was taking root. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, a cold dread seeping into my bones. Why did I feel so constantly exhausted? Why did every conversation feel like a test I was failing? My reality, once so solid and predictable, was becoming a fluid, shifting landscape, and I was losing my footing. Then came the night that shattered everything. It started as a stupid argument, fueled by wine and her insistence that I was flirting with a customer who had merely asked about her car's oil change schedule. I remember trying to reason with her, my voice calm despite the rising frustration. Jessica, she's married. I just answered her question. She wouldn't back down. You always do this, Kyle. You always make me feel small. It escalated quickly, her voice rising, then suddenly dropping to a chilling whisper. I felt a surge of anger, a rare occurrence for me, and I might have raised my voice, saying something like, I can't deal with this right now. I'm going for a walk. I remember the look on her face, a strange mix of hurt and something else, something I couldn't quite place, as I walked out the door, needing air. I was gone for maybe 20 minutes, just walked around the block, trying to clear my head. When I came back, the door was unlocked. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. I called her name, a sense of dread creeping up my spine. Jessica? Jessica. Then I saw her. She was sitting on the floor in the living room, leaning against the sofa, her knees drawn up to her chest. Her hair was disheveled, her shirt askew. There was a faint red mark on her cheek, and her eyes were wide, filled with a terrified, vacant stare. A gasp escaped my lips. Jessica, what happened? Did you fall? She didn't answer, just stared at me. Then her gaze flickered to the front door, then back to me, and a single tear traced a path down her cheek. That's when I heard the pounding. Loud, insistent. Before I could even process what was happening, the door burst open. Two police officers stood there, grim-faced. One of them pointed at me. Kyle Miller? You're under arrest. My mind reeled. Arrest? For what? Jessica, what are they talking about? But she just shrank further into herself, letting out a soft whimper. She looked so small, so broken. The officer read me my rights, his words echoing in the sudden, terrifying silence. Assault. Domestic violence. I was numb. I tried to protest, to explain, but my words felt hollow, unbelievable even to my own ears. Jessica, tell them. Tell them nothing happened. But she just sobbed, a sound that tore through me, and buried her face in her hands. The next few weeks were a blur of interrogation rooms, a bewildered lawyer I could barely afford, and the crushing weight of public shaming. My reputation, built on years of honest work, crumbled in days. My shop was vandalized, spray-painted with ugly words. My phone rang constantly, but it wasn't support. It was accusations, condemnation, betrayal. Mike, my best friend, called once, his voice heavy with disappointment. I heard what happened, Kyle. I can't believe it. I tried to tell him. I swear, I didn't touch her, but he hung up. The world believed Jessica. How could they not? She was so convincing, so fragile, so believable. The red mark on her face, her tearful testimony, her carefully constructed narrative of my sudden, violent rage. Even I, in my confusion, started to doubt myself. Did I black out? Did I do something in anger that I couldn't remember? The gaslighting had been so thorough, so pervasive, that it had twisted my own memories into a weapon against me. I felt like a stranger in my own skin, a monster I didn't recognize. The legal battle was brief and devastating. With no one to corroborate my story and Jessica's seemingly undeniable evidence, I took a plea deal to avoid jail time, resulting in a felony conviction, community service, and a restraining order. My business was seized to cover legal fees and damages. My life, as I knew it, was over. For years, I existed in a fog. I moved out of Miami, trying to escape the whispers, but the internal echoes followed me. I got by with odd jobs, cash under the table, living a ghost of a life. The shame was a constant companion, a burning coal in my chest. I avoided mirrors, hated the reflection of the hollow-eyed man staring back. I truly believed I was tainted, perhaps even capable of the violence Jessica accused me of. The idea that I might have hurt someone I loved, even if I couldn't remember it, was a terrifying wound that festered. Then, about a year ago, I got a call. An unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer it. It was from Mark, one of my old acquaintances from Miami, who had moved away years ago to study law. His voice was hesitant, almost apologetic. Kyle, is this Kyle Miller? I cleared my throat, the name feeling foreign on my tongue. Yeah, it's me. He told me he was a lawyer now, practicing in Florida. He'd recently been involved in a domestic violence case. And something about the testimony had reminded him of my situation. He'd looked into it. Discreetly, he assured me. He hinted at inconsistencies in Jessica's testimony from the initial investigation, little things that didn't quite add up to a legal eye. He didn't accuse, he didn't promise, he just offered, if you ever wanted to talk. The call was a spark, faint but insistent, in the dark chamber of my despair. My first reaction was terror. Revisit it. Go through all that again. My stomach churned. But beneath the fear, a desperate, almost primal need for answers began to stir. What if? What if he was right? What if I wasn't the monster? I called him back a week later, my hands shaking. Meeting Mark felt like stepping back into a forgotten life. He was patient, kind, and professional. He laid out what he had, mostly vague discrepancies, but enough to plant a seed of doubt that finally took root in my mind. He suggested we start by just looking, just searching. No commitment. Just to see. It began with archived social media posts. Painstakingly, we trawled through old Facebook and Instagram profiles, digging up timelines, comments, photos. I had deleted all my own accounts years ago, desperate to erase myself, but hers were still there, dormant. It was agonizing, like cutting open an old wound, but I forced myself to look, to remember. And then, a small detail. A photo of Jessica from a few weeks before the incident. She had posted it herself. A close-up selfie, radiant, smiling. And there, faintly, almost invisible under a carefully applied layer of makeup, was a tiny, faint bruise-like mark on her cheek. The same side she claimed I had hit. But that photo was taken before our fight. My breath caught in my throat. It was a minor detail, easily dismissed, but it was there. That tiny discrepancy opened the floodgates. My memories, once a jumbled, unreliable mess, began to piece themselves together with chilling clarity. I remembered her often bumping into things, sometimes dramatically, sometimes almost unnoticed. I remembered her tendency to exaggerate minor injuries. It was like a veil was slowly lifting, not from the past itself, but from my perception of it. Mark, with his legal expertise, started digging deeper. He found conflicting witness statements from neighbors in our building, people who had been interviewed briefly after the incident. One neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, had originally stated she heard a commotion, but later, when re-interviewed by Mark, she admitted she only heard Jessica's voice, raised and distressed, after I had left the apartment, and only then saw Jessica sitting on the floor. She never actually saw me lay a hand on her. She had just assumed based on Jessica's distress and the accusation. Another neighbor, a young student, had initially told police she heard a crash, but later confessed she was listening to loud music and couldn't be sure of the source of any sound. The police, understandably, had taken the most damning accounts at face value, combined with Jessica's compelling performance. But the biggest breakthrough came when Mark started investigating Jessica's past relationships. It turned out Jessica had a pattern, a history. She had accused a previous boyfriend, years ago, of emotional abuse and theft, fabricating a story that led to his job loss and public humiliation. The charges were never formally pressed, but the damage was done. Another ex had faced similar accusations of harassment after she ended their relationship, a narrative she spun to mutual friends that painted him as obsessive and dangerous. Jessica had used social media, then too, to selectively share parts of her story, always casting herself as the vulnerable victim, gaining sympathy, leveraging it to exact revenge or control. It was a calculated, deliberate pattern of behavior. My blood ran cold as I read the compiled reports. The sheer, chilling repetition of it. It wasn't just me. I was one in a line of victims. The anger hit me like a physical blow. A profound, searing rage that was unlike anything I had ever felt. It wasn't just for the lost years, the lost business, the lost friends. It was for the violation of my trust, the deliberate destruction of my identity, the way she had made me question my very soul. I collapsed, not physically, but internally. The raw grief for the life stolen, the dreams shattered, overwhelmed me. I spent days locked away, staring at walls, crying until my eyes were raw, screaming into pillows. I felt the full weight of her betrayal, the cold, calculating malice that lay beneath her captivating charm. The realization that I had been so utterly fooled, so completely manipulated, was almost unbearable. But then, slowly, something shifted. The utter devastation gave way to a fierce, burning determination. No, not anymore. I would not let her win. I would not let her keep my truth. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about justice. It was about every person she had wronged, every truth she had twisted. I looked at Mark, my eyes probably still red-rimmed and swollen, but a new resolve hardening my jaw. We're doing this, I told him. We're going after her. Mark had already begun the process. He had meticulously gathered undeniable proof. We had new witness accounts, people willing to come forward now that questions were being raised, people who had seen Jessica's volatile side or remembered her dramatic narratives. We had digital forensics, not just the social media posts, but analysis showing deleted messages, timed to coincide with certain events or altered photos. The pattern of Jessica's past deceptions, laid out clearly by Mark, painted a damning picture. It was a mountain of evidence, patiently built, piece by agonizing piece. We arranged for a new hearing. It wasn't a criminal trial against Jessica, not initially. It was a petition to vacate my original plea, to present new evidence that proved my innocence and showed the initial accusation was false. I remember the day, walking into that courtroom, my heart pounding like a drum. It was in a different city, a different judge, a different life. Jessica was there, dressed impeccably, a picture of calm confidence. She still had that look, that captivating aura, as if butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. She glanced at me, a faint smirk playing on her lips, as if amused by my pathetic attempt to resurrect a dead past. But this time, I wasn't the bewildered, broken man from years ago. This time I was ready. Mark started, calmly presenting the new witness statements. One by one, people took the stand, not just Mrs. Rodriguez or the student, but others who had seen Jessica's manipulative behavior, people who had been her confidants and had seen her spin tales. You could see the subtle shift in Jessica's demeanor, the confident smile wavering, a flicker of unease in her eyes. Then came the digital forensics. Mark projected the archived social media posts onto a large screen. The photo with the faint mark on her cheek, dated weeks before the incident. The timeline of her posts, strategically crafted, carefully edited. He showed the court the pattern, the history of her accusations against past partners, the calculated way she had used sympathy and deception. As the evidence mounted, Jessica's facade began to crumble. Her shoulders stiffened. Her eyes, which had once sparkled, now darted around the room, full of a panicked, trapped desperation. When Mark presented a timeline showing how she had fabricated text message conversations, designed to make it look like I was harassing her, a visible tremor went through her. Finally, it was my turn to speak. I stood up, my voice surprisingly steady. I didn't shout, I didn't rage. I simply spoke my truth, calmly, factually. I described our relationship, the gaslighting, the night of the accusation, the subsequent devastation. I spoke of the years of shame, the isolation, the doubt she had sown in my own mind. My gaze met hers across the courtroom. For a moment, she seemed to shrink. But then, as Mark presented the final piece of evidence, a statement from a former close friend of Jessica's, who had finally come forward, detailing how Jessica had planned the accusation, how she had deliberately self-inflicted the mark on her face, and how she had coached the initial witnesses, something in Jessica snapped. She let out a guttural cry, a sound of pure, unadulterated fury. He's lying. He's lying. He always lies. She surged forward, her face contorted, all traces of her fragile persona gone. He's doing this because he couldn't stand that I left him. He deserved what he got. Her voice rose to a shriek, revealing the calculated malice, the cold venom that had been hidden beneath her tears and charm for so long. The bailiffs quickly moved in, restraining her as she thrashed, screaming obscenities. The court was in shock. It was over. Her mask had finally fallen, and the ugliness beneath was undeniable. The judge, a stern but fair woman, banged her gavel. She exonerated me. The words, The court finds clear and convincing evidence that Mr. Miller's plea was entered under duress, influenced by fabricated evidence, and hereby vacates all charges, were the sweetest sound I had ever heard. The truth, finally. It didn't erase the lost years, the lost friends, the profound grief. But it began, slowly, to mend my reputation. Jessica, in her outburst, had sealed her own fate. She now faces charges for perjury, defamation, and obstruction of justice. The aftermath wasn't an instant fix. The scars were deep, the trauma immense. I entered intensive therapy, something I should have done years ago. It was a painful, necessary process, sifting through the layers of betrayal, anger, and self-doubt. Learning to trust again, first myself, then others, has been the hardest part. The world still feels a little sharper, a little more guarded, but I'm learning to navigate it without the constant fear. I opened a new mechanic shop, smaller this time, in a different part of town. No big fanfare, just honest work, one car at a time. The old friends, the ones who had believed Jessica, they've started to reach out. Some have apologized, awkwardly, sincerely. I haven't forgiven everyone. Not yet, but I'm trying. Mike, my best friend, came to the shop last month. He didn't say much, just bought me a beer and we talked about cars, like old times. It was a quiet moment, but it felt like a heavy weight had lifted. Sometimes, I still catch myself flinching when a police siren wails. The echoes of shame are still there, in the quiet moments, in the way I instinctively check locks or second-guess conversations. But they're softer now, fading with each passing day. I've found a quiet strength in my resilience, a profound freedom in finally having my truth heard. The journey isn't over. The man I was before Jessica is gone. But the man I am now, forged in the fires of betrayal and tempered by the struggle for truth, is stronger, wiser, and finally, free. It's bittersweet, yes, but it's mine. And for the first time in a long time, I can look in the mirror and not see a monster, but a survivor.